Chapter 1, Some Quick Cash. In a busy city, the skyscrapers mirrored the morning light, and the sounds of people talking and car horns mixed. As city life came to life in the morning, people rushed back and forth, each with their own daily tasks to complete. But within the busy city, a small alleyway, hiding away between two large buildings, was quiet. It was very quiet. The only things you could hear were trash bags rustling and the garbage truck making its rounds. Behind a large garbage skip bin, a figure lay there motionless, covered by the shadows. The young man's dirty medium black hair was dirty and messy, his face covered with dirt and grime. His ripped-up clothes showing the hardships of life he had faced, and with his skinny frame you would think he was malnourished. His eyes, even though closed, had dark rings, and showed exhaustion, the hard times in the streets catching up to him. This was Damon. Despite his youthful age, Damon's rugged appearance made him look decades older. This was the true reality of hunger and homelessness, a truth that many in the city chose to ignore. As dawn broke and light crept into the alleyway, Damon moved, and his eyes flickered open to show that he was still alive. He sat up slowly, his movements stiff from the cold, hard ground. He groaned and got to his feet, looking around the alley as if he was searching for something. As he stood up, his bright blue eyes reflected the morning light, leaving wonder to what face was hidden under the layer of dirt, pimples, and imperfections that covered his face. He searched the garbage bin, his hands going through the trash in desperation. After a long time of dumpster diving, he came out with a dejected look, mumbling "fucking hell" under his breath. But he didn't drown in his disappointment. He had long learned that the streets were unforgiving, and no one was going to comfort or help him. So, he understood well, he left the alley, heading to another spot in search of something to eat. As he walked, he bumped into a man wearing a black suit, who was deeply focused in a phone call and walking in a rush. Damon tried to sidestep, but they collided, and the man looked at him with fury, clicking his phone shut and glaring at Damon with disgust. "What the fuck are you doing, you dirty bum?" The man spat, looking at Damon with a contempt glare. "Can't you see where you're walking? You fucking..." He turned and stormed off, not finishing his thought. The man's rude words didn't bother Damon. He was used to being insulted and had built up a thick skin over time. The fact that it wasn't even the worst thing he had ever experienced led him to simply forget about it. He carried on, his eyes looking for any indication of a possibility across the streets. The road got wider as he walked. It seemed like the tall buildings and busy streets made him feel small and unimportant. And /o/bell/b//in.c//ohm. In a backyard, surrounded by an octagon steel fence, a middle-aged man, Chris, was yelling at a young man, "Joey. What the hell, Joey? I thought I told you to fill the card. Now you're saying we're missing a guy. What the hell is wrong with you?" Chris roared, his cheeks flushed with anger as his voice grew higher. Joey looked away from Chris's eyes. "Man, you did. Chris, I'm sorry. This Friday, I lost myself. Don't worry, I'll try to find someone to fill the void." He spoke quickly and shakily, and his hands were a little shaking. Chris got a little calmer, but he was still upset. "How are you going to get them to fight? With such little time to prepare, no one will want to fight." He kept his eyes on Joey as he paced back and forth. Joey thought fast, trying to figure out what to do. "Listen, I'll just say the prize for the winner. That should make some sucker want to fight. He's gonna be a filler anyway, not great." He spoke with confidence to try to persuade Chris. Chris raised an eyebrow and looked doubtful. "You think that'll work?" Joey nodded. "Yeah, I'm sure of it. I'll just post it online, and we'll get some desperate guy who needs the money. He won't care that he's going to lose." Chris sighed and rubbed his forehead. "Okay, dude, we need a fighter soon. People will get here quickly, and the seats will start to fill up. Go." He turned around and told Joey to go. Joey nodded, quickly took out his phone, and began typing. "I'll get someone, Chris, don't worry." As Joey left, Chris couldn't help but feel uneasy about what was going on. He knew it would be hard to find a fighter so quickly, but they had no other choice. The show must go on, and he needed a fighter to fill the card. Damon saw that he was now in the housing area as he walked. People in this area were known to be poor, and anyone who seemed to be rich was often looked at with suspicion. You either did something illegal or you did something illegal. Damon knew people here watched out for one another. He had become used to this way of life. As he continued walking, he saw a guy walking straight towards him, eyes glued on his phone. Damon shook his head, thinking to himself, Not another one. He was about to step around the other guy, but they bumped into each other. The other guy turned around, his face twisted in anger. "Watch where you're going, you fucking." When the guy looked up and saw Damon's face, he stopped talking. They just looked at each other for a short time, and Damon noticed the excitement on the man's face, which made him uncomfortable. After that, the guy's face changed. He smiled and put out his hand. "Hey man, you want to make a quick buck?" And these were the words of that sparked the killer machine. Chapter 2. The Desperation of Survival. When Damon followed the guy, he couldn't stop thinking of questions. Why did he say yes to this offer? He didn't like fights. It went against everything he believed in. He had to eat, though, because his stomach wasn't going to go along with him. He might be able to change his life around if he won some money. Buy some new clothes, get a haircut, and finally apply for a job. People always seemed to think that being homeless was a choice, that all someone needed to do was get a job, and everything would be okay. But it wasn't that simple. Would you hire a poor person if you owned a business? That was the question that everyone had to ask. As a homeless person, Damon knew that people looked at him with disgust, like he was less than human. They didn't see how hard it was for him every day to find food and a place to live. They didn't see how painful and scary it was to live on the streets. And they definitely didn't see the desperation that drove him to accept this fight. The guy was still on his phone when they got to the house, and he led Damon to the back of the house. Damon saw that the yard was large, very large, and it was grassy, with an octagon cage made of fence gates. There were some people sitting on benches, chatting. Damon saw a bulky middle-aged man coming straight to him. Well, he was going to the guy that brought him here. "Joey. You came back soon. Did you finally find him? I mean, the fighter, and who's that guy behind you?" "Wait, don't tell me he's the fighter." The man pulled the young man away from Damon. "What are you doing, man?" "I brought the fighter, like I said," Joey said, annoyed, as he pulled his shoulder away from the man's hold. The man didn't seem happy. He looked at Damon in a weird way, then back at Joey. "Do you even see what you brought? This guy is like a twig, he also stinks. No one will want to fight with him." Damon heard all the names they just called him. It didn't affect him. He had heard way worse from his father. Thinking of his father, his heart raced in fear, then calmed, remembering what happened. Joey, the young man, walked up to him. "Hey, man, you can just wait here. We'll call you when it's your turn to fight." He then turned and went back to the man as they walked off. After that, he turned around and followed the man as he walked away. And /o/bell/b/jn.c//ohm. Damon was left standing by himself and felt uncomfortable and out of place. He turned around and saw that everyone was looking at him with curious and disgusted looks on their faces. As more people arrived, the yard became busy. When it was really full, Joey went inside the made-up cage. He screamed, introducing the event with a loud, energetic voice that sent chills down Damon's spine. The way he did it reminded him of the show his father used to beat him to watch. It was UF. No, was it UF? No, it was UFA, Ultimate Fighting Association. The fights began, and Damon noticed the fighters seemed to be wearing fingerless gloves for protection. He got closer to the fight. People made way for him, and not because of some respectful reason, it was rather his dirty and stinky appearance that made them want to avoid him. There was a lot of hitting and grunting as he got closer to the cage. With his eyes glued on the fighters, Damon's heart pounded with eagerness. He noticed the fighters were all wearing similar gloves, their hands wrapped in tape, their eyes fixed on each other with a fierce determination. It made Damon feel uneasy to know that he was about to enter that world. He watched as the blonde guy threw a powerful right hook at the brunette. The brunette barely avoided the hook and tried to push it away, but it still landed on him and knocked him back a few steps. Surprisingly, the blonde guy didn't take advantage of his short-term edge. Instead, he chose to get closer to his opponent. The brunette straightened himself fast and started a barrage of punches, some of which landed solidly on the face of the blonde guy. The blonde guy stumbled back, his eyes widening in shock as the brunette kept pushing for the attack. In a bizarre display, the brunette threw a wild kick that missed the blonde guy by mere inches. He didn't give up and kept attacking with a number of overhand punches, one of which went off with a loud bang. The blonde guy gave on and fell to the ground, beaten. The brunette stood tall and proud, his arms raised in victory as the crowd cheered. Damon could feel the excitement in the yard, and his heart was beating hard and fast. He quickly looked at the knocked-out blonde man and then turned to face Joey, who was motioning for him to enter the cage. "Hey, man, it's your turn," Joey said in a low, urgent voice. "Just get in there and do your best." "Yeah." Damon took a big breath. He was next. Chapter 3, The Unlikely Opponent. After the fighters got out of the cage, one of them was dragged out and another guy entered. He looked like someone's dad, with a beer belly and a stubble beard. Damon was about to get in when Joey pulled him back. "What are you doing?" "Take off that jacket," Joey said. Staring at his jacket, he realized he hadn't taken off his worn-out jacket in years when he looked down at it. He slowly took it off, showing off his skinny, unhealthy arms. Joey was shocked and his eyes got really big. How can someone be this skinny? Damon got in the cage, and the moment the crowd saw him, they broke into chatter. "The fuck? Did Chris and Joey get some sick kid to fight? I didn't pay for this shit." One of the people in the crowd shouted. Damon looked around, feeling self-conscious. Unlike the others, he saw the man he was going to fight didn't have on any gloves. "Where are the fighting gloves?" Damon asked, glaring at the bare hands. The man looked at him, smiling. "I don't need them. You can wear them if you want, but don't expect me to. Now, boy, let's fight." A lot of people laughed and jeered. For that reason, Damon's face got hot with shame. He looked at his opponent, who had a confident smile on his face. Damon realized he was in for a tough fight. After they rang a small bell, Damon stepped back and put up his fist as a weak defense. He looked like the most non-intimidating person in the cage, with his skinny arms and frail frame, and stance, if you even wanted to call it a stance. The man didn't even spare a moment to size him up. He went straight for the attack, throwing punches like a maniac. Damon's eyes widened as he struggled to block the punches, his hands shaking with fear. He couldn't help but get flashbacks of his dad's brutal beatings. He put his hands in front of his face to block the punch, but the man's fist landed squarely on his chin. Everyone was surprised when Damon stayed upright. He staggered back, tears welling up from the pain. Cheers and jeers broke out from the audience, their voices full of excitement and thirst for blood. Not slowing down, Damon's opponent delivered another punch that knocked him staggered backward. With his limbs flinging wildly as he attempted to keep on his feet, resembling a rag doll. Damon looked quickly around the cage, wanting to get out. He spotted an opening and threw a kick, but the moment his shin hit the guy's leg, he felt a searing pain. The man used Damon's short-lived attention to throw another poorly planned punch. This one landed squarely on Damon's cheek, sending him stumbling back. There was blood everywhere, and everyone went crazy. Someone yelled, "He's not even blocking, this motherfucker. No one blocks here anyway, but he's eating those punches away. That kid can take a punch for real." Damon didn't want to give up, even though his face was covered in blood and cuts. He threw a wild punch, but his opponent caught it and countered with a vicious uppercut. Damon's head snapped back, his eyes rolling into the back of his head. The crowd was on its feet, screaming for more. The man hit Damon again, and he stumbled backwards, his eyes going cloudy. He stood his ground and wouldn't budge. Each of the man's punches sent a painful thud through the air. Joey and Chris were watching the fight with wide eyes from a nearby corner. It was hard for Chris to believe what Joey was telling him. "What the fuck kind of crackhead did you get me? This guy is crazy." It shocked Joey too, and he asked himself, "Am I a natural scout? I told you I'll find the right guy, and I'm sure this will work out well." Chris nodded in agreement, his eyes looking on the fight. "Don't get it twisted, the guy is bad at fighting. Well, everyone here is bad at fighting, but this guy is worse. However, to eat punches from a guy triple his size is insane." He glanced at the crowd, cheering and chanting for more. Chris wondered if he brought the guy to fight again, maybe he might make even more money off the entrance fee. The crowd was crazy and excited, and you could feel it. Both Joey and Chris looked at each other and agreed, this was a gold mine. The fact that this guy is willing to take a beating could make them a lot of money. As the fight went on, Damon stumbled around the cage, blood all over his face. Joey leaned in, but it was hard to hear him. "We need to get him to fight again," he said. "This will make us a lot of bag." Chris nodded, his eyes gleaming with excitement. "You talk to him, see if we can set up another fight." Joey grinned, his mind already going over the possibilities. "This is going to be big, Chris. Really big." Back in the fight, Damon's mind was shot as he tried to throw his own punch. But when he hit the guy on the chin, he didn't move. He just ate the punch like he had one of his before. And /o/bell/b//in.c//ohm. Damon's body shook with fear as his eyes grew wide in shock. With a look of frustration on his face, the guy snatched him up and hurled him to the ground before he could react. The guy's punches came raining down on Damon's face, each one landing with disturbing sound. There was blood everywhere, turning the grass red. The hits to Damon's head made his mind spin. He felt himself being pulled back into the darkness, the same darkness he had experienced countless times before. The guy had to be pulled off of him by other people. But not before he took a few more swings. Damon's head rang, his vision blurry. He was back in the living room, on the floor, and his father was hitting him hard. It was the same hopelessness and fear that felt he was going to die that hit him. Suddenly, he heard a sound. EMMAC system activated. Everything went black, and Damon was out. People in the crowd gasped and kept quiet in shock. Joey and Chris looked at each other with worry. What had just happened? Was the guy okay? They didn't want death on their hands. Chapter 4, The Stern Lecture. Damon's vision became hazy and unfocused as his eyes slowly opened. The dull pain in his head that throbbed like a bass drum making a beat was the first thing he noticed. He winced, and it felt like 1,000 pins were poking at his skin on his face. He sighed as a familiar hand rubbed his back. He knew he had to explain why his face looked so battered. "Ah, you're awake, are you?" A sharp voice with a clear Irish brogue asked. Leaning back against the alley wall, Damon sat up and looked down. He couldn't bear to look at her. "Boy, I asked if you're okay or not," she finally said, her voice forceful but full of worry. And /o/bell/b//jn.c//ohm. With a voice hardly audible above a whisper, Damon nodded. "I'm fine, Mom." She quickly responded, her accent deepening with irritation. "Good, then you'll tell me what got you looking like that, ain't you? Since you're fine, that means you can talk well." Damon didn't say anything and kept his eyes on the dirty floor of the alley. He said mumbling, "Ah, it's nothing, Mom," but she stopped him. She stood up, and her eyes were burning with anger. "It's feckin' nothing, Damon. You leave, don't come home for the night, and then you come back lookin' like you've been through a war. Are you pullin' me leg, Damon?" Her voice got higher, and every word had a bit of doubt and worry in it. Damon felt bad because he knew he had to tell the truth. Damon paused, his mind working on a reason. The silence from him didn't end. Finally taking a big breath, Damon spoke, but his voice was so low it was almost a whisper. "Mom, I fought." Her eyes got narrow and her face turned serious. "A fight? What kind of fight, Damon?" Damon hesitated, knowing he had to reveal the truth. "A backyard fight, Mom. I was desperate, and we need the money." Her face fell, her eyes wide with shock. "Damon, what have you gotten yourself into?" He knew he had to explain so she could get it. But where did he even start? Aoife fixed her eyes on Damon's, and her look was sharp and eager. "Promise me, Damon. Promise me you won't go there again." Her voice trembled, her hands shaking as she grasped his neck. Damon's eyes slid away from hers, his gaze faltered. He couldn't guarantee her that. He would not lie to her. They also desperately needed the money. The pain in Oiwaf's face made her eyes well up with tears. "Damon, my baby boy. I don't want to lose you." Damon felt his chest tighten with feeling as his heart twisted. He felt as if he had a lump in his mouth as he looked at his mother. Her face brimmed with fear and worry. His voice cracked. "I'm sorry, Mom," he said in a whisper. "I didn't mean to worry you." Oiwaf's grip on his neck tightened, her fingers digging into his skin. "You're all I have, Damon. You're all that matters to me. Please, promise me you won't go back to that place." Tears pricked Damon's eyes and clouded his vision. His throat constricted with emotion as he experienced a stinging sensation in his nostrils. He wanted to promise her, he wanted to reassure her, but just he couldn't lie to her. I can't, Mom," he stammered, his voice barely audible. When Aoife sobbed, her face got scrunched up and her body shook. He felt bad about what he did. He knew he'd let her down and disappointed her. But he couldn't promise her something he knew he couldn't keep. He couldn't promise her he wouldn't go back to the fights, not when they needed the money so desperately. As Oiwaf's sobs rang through the alley, his resolve grew stronger. He would and will do anything to keep his mother safe and take care of her, even if it put himself in danger. Damon's eyes blinked and his attention fell to the ground. For the sake of his mother, he had to be strong. He took a deep breath as his mind worked quickly to find a way out. Mom, He started, his voice barely above a whisper. Oiwaf's sobs slowly subsided, her eyes red and puffy from crying. What, Damon? What do you have to say for yourself? Damon swallowed hard, and his throat got tight. Whatever it takes, Mom, I'll take care of you. I promise. Oiwaf's eyes scanned his face as her expression softened. Damon, you are my only child. I can't lose you, my one and only family. Damon felt a lump form in his throat, his vision blurring. I know, Mom. I'll be careful, I promise. Oiwaf's grip on his neck relaxed, her fingers sliding down to his shoulder. See that you are, Damon. See that you are. As they sat there in silence, Damon knew he had to find a way to make things right. He had to find a way to take care of his mom without putting himself in danger. Still, he chose to enjoy the warmth of her touch and the love in her eyes for now. Aoife looked at Damon with amused sparkles in her eyes, her expression half playful, half affectionate. With a thick and sweet Irish brogue, she remarked, and you're starting to sound more and more like a feckin' American day by day. Damon nodded in agreement and laughed, crinkling the corners of his eyes. His accent was as heavy as his mother's when they had first moved here, but now it only appeared when he was emotional, especially angry. As he stood up, Aoife rose with him, her brown hair still beautiful despite being dry. Damon turned to her, his eyes locking onto hers, and said, I'm just going to get the money I won, Mom. It's fine. I'll be back real soon, okay? Aoife sat back down on the ground and nodded. Her face showed that she trusted the man. She believed her son would never lie to her, so she always believed what he said. Chapter 5, Activation. Damon's feet hit the ground in a steady beat, and as he walked, he looked around at all the people on the streets. He could hear the sounds of the city all around him, people talking, car horns honking, and alarm noises in the distance. He had been walking for minutes, and he was lost in thought when suddenly, a strange message flashed before his eyes. EMMAC system has fully activated. Damon's heart skipped a beat as he stopped dead in his tracks, looking around in confusion. The people passing by seemed oblivious to the strange text hovering in front of him. He quickened his pace, his eyes darting back and forth as if searching for an escape. He hid behind a big ben and ducked into a little alley, his feet ringing off the walls. Panting, he sat down and his head whirled. What the fuck is happening here? Do I schizophrenia? His voice shook as he murmured to himself. Slowly, Damon's eyes got used to the dark. He kept his eyes on the ground as he tried to figure out what the strange message meant. EMMAC system, Elite Mixed Martial Arts Championship system, a system that will help host become the best fighter in the world. Damon stared at the words, his mind racing with questions. EMMAC system, Elite Mixed Martial Arts Championship system. A system that would help him become the best fighter in the world. He froze for some time, not believing what he was seeing. Was his schizophrenia this bad, that his nightmare of fighting was haunting him? He looked around, wondering if anyone was playing a prank on him, but he was alone in the alley. He looked back at the screen, and saw another message. Do you accept the beginner's package? Why, N? Damon hesitated for a moment, wondering if he should play along. n/o/bell/b/jn.c//ohm. But his curiosity got the better of him, and he chose yes. He saw no reason to say no, even if it was just a hallucination. He wanted to see where this would go. Beginner's package has been opened. MMA flexible gloves. Stagord. One-time submission move. Body training enhancer F rank. Damon's eyes widened as he saw what was in the package. He couldn't believe it. Was this really happening? Suddenly, there was a box in front of him. Damon began to wonder if he was really seeing things. But then he saw the box and slowly opened it to see what was inside. As he opened it, he saw a pair of MMA gloves, a Stagord. Damon's mind was racing with questions. What was this technology? How did it work? He experienced doubt as well as enthusiasm. Though he was ready to find out, he had no idea what he was getting into. Realizing the Stagord was a mouthguard, Damon grabbed it. He touched it and once more a message showed up on his face. Mouthpiece Stagord, a mouthpiece that will stay in your mouth no matter how many shots you take. It is stable, providing good protection for not only the teeth but the entire mouth. He had wondered if this was what fighters used, and it seemed he was right. He put the Stagord in his pocket, feeling excited and interested about this system thing. What were some other things about it? When he touched the gloves, it sent another message. MMA flexible gloves. These gloves can change from boxing gloves to MMA fingerless gloves, giving the user a single pair. They provide protection for the knuckles, while also making sure that the user's hits are not limited by the glove. Intrigued, Damon put on the gloves and felt a connection form between them. He could switch between boxing and MMA gloves seamlessly. He tested them, punching the air, and felt a surge of power and flexibility. The gloves were amazing. After testing them, he removed the gloves and stored them in his jacket. However, he noticed the other items were not there, leaving him wondering how to access them. He thought about it, trying to figure out the next step. As he pondered, a panel appeared before him, filled with words. He stared at it, unsure what to do next. The panel seemed to be waiting for him to make a move, but he was hesitant. Status. Shop locked. Damon looked at the screen, wondering what in the world it all meant. He moved his finger to press the panel, but it just passed through it like it was made of air. Then how the feck am I supposed to use the bloody thing? He exclaimed, his Irish brogue getting thicker by the minute. He calmed down by taking a deep breath. As he thought of how he could use it, he tried to figure it out until he cracked. He might be crazy, but he was now interested. He yelled in his head, "Open the feckin' status then." But nothing happened. The panel just sat there, mocking him with its blank screen. Damon's mind filled with questions. What was this thing? How did it work? And what did it want from him? He stared at the panel, his eyes burning with intensity. He was determined to figure it out, no matter what it took. And then, just as he was about to give up, the panel flickered to life. The word status and shop started flashing like mad, and Damon felt a surge of excitement. That's when a long panel of numbers and words appeared. Chapter 7, Sleeping with a Meal for Once. As Damon ran back to the alley, his feet hit the ground hard. He was so tired that he could barely breathe. He was aware that he had been gone for too long and that his mother would be very worried. He felt sick to his stomach at the thought of her yelling at him. The darkness wrapped around him like a cloud as he turned into the alley. The only sounds were the buzzing of a generator far away and the soft rustling of trash in the wind. As Damon's eyes slowly got used to the dim light, he kept his focus on the spot where they usually slept. His mother was still awake, and when she saw him coming, her eyes lit up with fear and relief. She grasped his shoulders, pulling him into a tight hug. You're fine," she spoke in a low voice, her Irish accent full of emotion. "You went out all day, leaving me here worried sick." As Damon hugged her back, the loaf of bread and fruit stuck out of his hands. He felt bad about coming late. He knew he'd caused her unnecessary worry, but he hoped the food would make up for it. Aoife pulled back, her eyes narrowing as she spotted the bread and bananas. "What's this, boy? You went out to steal, are you mental?" Her voice rose, looking at Damon with a stern look that only mothers could do. Damon shook his head, feeling a defensive surge. "No, Mom, I didn't steal it. Joey, the guy who organized the fight, he gave it to me." Oiwaf's expression softened slightly, but her eyes still sparkled with skepticism. "Joey, is it? And what's this Joey's business, eh?" Damon took a deep breath, explaining the situation, leaving out no details. Aoife listened intently. As he finished, she sighed, her shoulders sagging in relief. "Ah, thank the saints you're safe, Damon. But next time, you'll be telling me before you go off on some night adventure, got it?" Damon nodded. He knew he'd put his mother through hell, but he also knew she loved him unconditionally. Oiwaf's eyes locked onto the bread and bananas, a small smile playing on her lips. "Well, I suppose we can't complain about the provisions. Let's get some rest, and we'll figure out what to do next." As they got ready for bed, Damon felt calm. He knew he had a lot of work to do. When Damon sat down, the worn pavement felt familiar with its uncomfortable feeling. Aoife went after them, her eyes fixed on the loaf of bread like it was a treasure chest. A sweet smell came up as soon as Damon opened it. The first bite was like a combination of flavors on their tongues, a short break from the hard times they'd been through. But while they were eating, Damon's thoughts went back to Limerick, Ireland, the place where all of their problems and trauma started. His father, Taro Saito, a towering figure with a temper to match, had once been a loving husband and father. Even though Damon's early memories were fuzzy, he still remembered the kind and gentle person. However, as the years passed, Taro's demons consumed him: alcohol, gambling, and a penchant for UFA fights. The losses piled up, and with them, his rage. Damon's eyes clouded as he remembered the first time his father's anger turned on Aoife. He was 6, and the image of his mother's battered face, the sound of her cries, still haunted him. The beatings kept happening, and each one left a scar on Damon's young mind. Because of the stress, he had a hard time in school and his grades dropped. As he grew older, Taro's attention shifted from Aoife to Damon. The memories of those days were still there, like an open wound. Taro would watch mixed martial arts fights, study every move and trick, who would then use them on him. The pain, the fear, the helplessness. Aoife, oblivious to the extent of Taro's cruelty, began to notice the scars on Damon's body during their baths. She'd ask no questions, but her eyes would fill with a deep sadness, a silent understanding that something was amiss. And until she snapped. The bread, once a simple pleasure, now seemed like a luxury, as he was reminded of the life they'd left behind. As they ate, Damon felt a small feeling of hope. Maybe, just maybe, they could leave the past behind and forge a new path, one where the scars would slowly fade, and the memories would lose their hold. The thought was a fragile thing, but it was enough to keep him going, to keep him fighting, even if it haunted him. As they finished their meager meal, Aoife's eyes met Damon's. Her gaze was full of love, happy to have her son here with her. She kissed his cheek, her lips barely grazing his skin, and whispered, "Don't worry, boy. Everything will start looking up." Her smile was a thin veil. She didn't want worry Damon, so even if she doubted her statement, she hid it. She knew the truth. Their situation was dire, and the future uncertain. But she couldn't let Damon see that, not yet. He was still young, with dreams and aspirations that she couldn't let wither away like the trash that surrounded them. As she lay down, her eyes fluttered closed, and her chest rose and fell with a slow, steady rhythm. Damon watched her, as she fell asleep. He knew what she was doing, trying to shield him from the harsh realities of their life. But he also knew that he couldn't be shielded forever, nor should be. With a sigh, he turned his gaze to the wall opposite him. His mind wandered, lost in thoughts of what could be, what should be. Nov LB //JNN. But before he could drift off into the abyss of his own thoughts, the screen flickered to life in front of him. Damon's eyes locked onto the words. "Match detected on Saturday." The words seemed to sear themselves into his retina. "Analysis has been taken, health conditions taken into consideration." Damon's mind was spinning as he tried to understand the massage. "Daily challenge issued." The screen flickered once more, and then went dark, leaving Damon staring into the dark. He glanced at his mother, still fast asleep, oblivious to the sudden turn of events. Was it going to help him train? Chapter 8, Mixed Martial Arts. Damon's eyes locked onto the screen as it flickered back to life. The message was brief. User must choose martial arts before beginning training. EMMAC system focuses on mixed martial arts. He read through the description, his heart beating faster in excitement. Mixed martial arts is a full-contact combat sport that combined elements from various martial arts and combat disciplines. It is designed to be a comprehensive and versatile fighting system. The night sounds, like crickets singing, were all around him as he read. They were annoying, but he had already learned how to block them out. Damon's thoughts turned to his father, Taro, and the memories he had tried to suppress. Taro's anger and violence had left scars, both physical and emotional. But now, Damon saw an opportunity to take control, to learn how to defend himself and protect his mother. The screen went dark, leaving Damon to ponder his decision. He knew that this choice would change his life forever. He took a deep breath, his mind made up. He would pursue this fighting thing. He had to. Not only for him, but for his mother. Damon's eyes scanned the screen, taking in the lists of martial arts and their descriptions. He read through each one. The system will help user with striking and grappling/groundwork. He focused on the striking martial arts, knowing that's where he needed to start. His gaze lingered on each option, weighing the pros and cons. Striking martial arts. Muay Thai, known for its use of elbows, knees, kicks, and clinch work recommended. Kickboxing, focuses on punches and kicks, often combined with some clinch techniques recommended. Boxing, specializes in punches, footwork, and head movement. Karate, includes a variety of strikes, including punches, kicks, and sometimes elbows and knees. Taekwondo, emphasizes high, fast kicks and dynamic kicking techniques. Savate, a French martial art known for its sophisticated kicking techniques and street fighting origins. Kali, eskrima/arnis, Filipino martial arts that include striking with sticks, knives, and empty hand techniques. He deliberated. Which one would be best for him? Which one would help him achieve his goals? Damon's eyes returned to the two recommended options, Muay Thai and kickboxing. He compared them, trying to decide which one suited him better. Muay Thai seemed to offer more, with its emphasis on using elbows, knees, and clinch work. It appeared to be a more comprehensive martial art, one that would teach him how to utilize more of his body. With a deep breath, Damon made his decision. He clicked on Muay Thai, feeling a sense of determination wash over him. The screen flickered, and a new message appeared. Muay Thai selected. Training will commence soon. Please prepare yourself. Damon's eyes widened as a sudden, searing headache struck him. He felt like his mind was being flooded with information, memories, and knowledge. He tried to focus, but it was like trying to drink from a fire hose. The basic knowledge of Muay Thai poured into his mind like a tidal wave. He felt his brain expanding, trying to accommodate the influx of data. He gritted his teeth, determined not to make a sound and wake his mother. The minutes ticked by, each one feeling like an eternity. Damon's mind reeled as he tried to process the sheer amount of information. He felt like he was being rewritten, his brain cells rearranging themselves to accommodate the new knowledge. Finally, the headache subsided, leaving Damon feeling drained but strangely exhilarated. He stood up, his legs trembling slightly as he made his way to the open space in the alley. He looked around, taking in the familiar sights and sounds. The trash-filled bins, the graffiti-covered walls, the distant hum of the city. But now, everything seemed different. He felt like he saw the world through new eyes. And /o/bell/b/in.c//ohm. Damon tried to stand in a Muay Thai stance, spreading his legs and raising his hands. But it felt awkward, unnatural. He couldn't shake the feeling that he was doing it all wrong. He walked back to the bin, leaning against it as he tried to process his thoughts. He had gained knowledge, but not proficiency. He knew the theory, but not the practice. The night air was cool against his skin, a gentle breeze rustling his hair. Damon closed his eyes, trying to calm his racing mind. Striking knowledge has been imparted. Now pick a groundwork and grappling martial art. Damon's eyes widened as another message popped up on the screen. He felt a sense of nervousness wash over him as he read the options. How was he supposed to choose a groundwork martial art when he had no knowledge of any of them? He scanned the list again, trying to absorb as much information as possible. 1. Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, BJJ, focuses on submissions, positional control, and grappling on the ground recommended. 2. Wrestling, includes various styles like freestyle and folk style, focusing on takedowns, control, and groundwork recommended. 3. Submission wrestling, emphasizes submissions and positional control, similar to BJJ but often without the gi. 4. Judo, focuses on throws and groundwork, including pinning and submission techniques. 5. Sambo, a Russian martial art combining wrestling and judo, with a focus on throws, ground control, and submissions recommended. 6. Catch wrestling, known for its emphasis on submission holds and ground control, blending traditional wrestling with submission techniques. Damon massaged his temples, feeling a headache coming on. He had to choose carefully, but how could he when he didn't know the first thing about any of these martial arts? He looked around the alley, hoping to find some inspiration. Damon's eyes returned to the screen, his mind racing with questions. What was the difference between Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and submission wrestling? Was judo similar to sambo? And what exactly was catch wrestling? He took a deep breath, trying to calm his racing thoughts. He had to make a decision, but he couldn't shake the feeling that he was making a blind choice. The screen seemed to mock him, the options staring back like a challenge. Damon's heart pounded in his chest as he hesitated, his finger hovering over the screen. And then, just as he was about to make a decision, his mind went blank. He couldn't choose. Not yet. Damon slumped against the bin, his eyes fixed on the screen as he struggled to make a decision that would change his life forever. Chapter 9, Grappling with Uncertainty. Damon's eyes scanned the screen, his gaze lingering on the recommended martial arts for grappling and groundwork. He was stuck. He looked at wrestling, his brow furrowed in skepticism. Wasn't wrestling fake? He wondered, his voice barely above a whisper. He clamped his hand over his mouth, remembering that his mother was sleeping just a few feet away. Damon's stomach growled, a gentle protest against the meager meal they had shared earlier. He shook his head, trying to clear the cobwebs. Wrestling being fake, he wondered, but he was sure the system wouldn't recommend something useless. They wouldn't give him a fake martial art. He looked at Sambo, his eyes narrowing as he considered the option. It seemed intriguing, but something inside him told him to pick the first one, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Maybe it was his gut feeling. He didn't know why. Maybe because he chose the first martial art for striking on the list, he should do the same with grappling and groundwork. The thought echoed in his mind like a mantra, urging him to make a decision. Damon's fingers hovered over the screen, his heart pounding in his chest. He took a deep breath. Damon made his choice with some worry in his heart. Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. A new message showed up after the screen flickered. He got very excited when he read the confirmation. He had made up his mind. He could no longer do anything but wait and see what would happen. Damon's head throbbed again, the familiar ache spreading through his skull like a dull hum. He gritted his teeth, bracing himself against the discomfort. Though it was slightly less intense than before, the sensation still made his eyes water. He closed them, taking slow, deep breaths as the memories poured into his brain like a steady stream. The basics of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu imprinted on his mind, each technique and concept etching itself into his consciousness. He felt like a sponge, soaking up the knowledge, but struggling to retain it all. The pain subsided, leaving behind a dull, fuzzy feeling, like the echoes of a distant bell. Damon leaned back, his head hitting the bin with a soft thud. He winced, the sound echoing through the alley like a small crack. A small, subtle smile played on his mouth. He didn't know how to execute these moves, but he was determined to learn. The knowledge was there, locked in his mind like a book of moves, but he lacked the physical ability to perform them. It was like having a recipe without the ingredients or a map without a destination. But Damon was undeterred. He knew that with practice, he could master these techniques and start winning those backyard tournaments. NOVLB //JNN. The thought sent a surge of excitement through him, followed by a wave of exhaustion. He looked at his mom, her peaceful face illuminated by the faint light of the alley. He mumbled, his voice barely audible, "I'll do it for Mom." These words, a promise to both himself and her. Damon took a deep breath and felt the weight of his choice fall on his shoulders. Responsibility. As he was about to relax and rest his eyes, another message appeared on the screen. Damon's gaze snapped back to the display, his mind racing with the new information. Martial arts have been chosen. Host is free to learn any additional martial arts themselves, and the system will focus on the two chosen, which are Muay Thai and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. He nodded, understanding, feeling gratitude towards the system. He was already grateful enough to have a cheat that could help him learn faster, and now he had the freedom to explore other martial arts on his own. Information has been processed, and martial arts have been synchronized with the training. Damon's eyes narrowed, his mind foggy with fatigue. What training? He was already tired and wanted to sleep, his body craving rest after the intense mental upload. But before he could even process the thought, another message flashed on the screen. Daily challenge has been issued. Damon's heart skipped a beat as he read the words. 4 hours left before midnight. Complete today's exercise challenge. Failure to complete. Electronic death shock. His eyes widened in shock, the word slamming into him like a physical blow. What the hell? Electronic death shock. That sounded like something out of a sci-fi horror movie. Damon's mind reeled as he tried to process the information, his heart racing with fear. He was already tired, and now he had to complete some kind of exercise challenge or face. What? Death. He thought about the training, his mind still reeling from the previous message. When the screen flickered to life again, he was ready. Focusing on one martial art per week is more beneficial. Which martial art do you want to start with? Damon didn't hesitate, his mind already made up. Muay Thai Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. He chose Muay Thai, his fingers flying across the screen. It contained punches and kicks, the fundamental building blocks of any fighter's arsenal. He needed to master these basics before moving on to more complex techniques. Muay Thai has been chosen. The screen flashed, confirming his selection. Damon felt a surge of excitement, his heart racing with anticipation. Training plan dedicated to Muay Thai produced. The words appeared on the screen, followed by a detailed schedule. Daily challenge until fight day. EMMAC mission. The title seemed ominous, but Damon was undaunted. Saturday. -10 minutes jog, completed. -10 push-ups, sit-ups, squats. Shadow boxing 3 rounds of 3 minutes each. Basic strikes, punches, elbows, knees, and kicks. Chapter 10. Week. Damon wondered when he had completed the 10-minute jog. But he remembered running back to the alley, trying to avoid being late. He had probably ran more than 10 minutes, but he wasn't sure. He was glad he didn't have to run this late at night in Stockton. The city wasn't known for its kindness, especially after dark. Damon had 4 hours to complete his tasks. He stood up, walking to the open space in the alley. He decided to start with the next exercise, push-ups. He had never done them before, but he knew what they looked like. Damon dropped down, placing his hands on the ground. His arms were very skinny, and he wasn't sure if he could even do 5 push-ups. As he began, Damon felt the rough pavement beneath his hands. His shoulders felt weak, but he kept going. Damon did 1 push-up, then another. He was getting tired, but he didn't stop. Damon's arms started to shake, his muscles burning with fatigue. He did 5 push-ups, then paused to catch his breath. He was sweating, his heart racing with exertion. But he didn't give up. Damon did 5 more push-ups, his body screaming in protest. He was getting tired, but he refused to stop. As he finished the last push-up, Damon collapsed onto the ground. He was exhausted, his arms trembling with fatigue. But he felt a sense of pride, knowing he had completed the exercise. Damon lay there, catching his breath, his body slowly recovering from the exertion. He knew he had to keep going, to complete the rest of the tasks. But for now, he just lay there, feeling the rough pavement beneath him. He began doing the sit-ups, his body slowly lifting off the ground as he curled up towards his knees. The first one wasn't hard, but he felt a gentle tension in his abdominal muscles as he lifted up. He did the second one, and his core began to warm up, the muscles starting to engage as he sat up again. And /o/bell/b/jn.c//ohm. He felt like he could continue, so he did. As he did the third, fourth, and fifth sit-ups, the tension in his stomach grew, but he pushed on. His muscles were starting to burn, but he kept going, determined to finish. He did 6 sit-ups, and then paused, his abdominal muscles burning with fatigue. Damon took a deep breath, his chest heaving with exertion, and continued. His face turned red as he strained to lift himself up again and again. Sweat dripped from his brow, falling onto the pavement below him. He reached 9 sit-ups, and as he started to lift himself up for the 10th and final one, his body protested. The sounds he had been holding back, the grunts and groans of effort, finally escaped his lips as he groaned in exertion. Just one more. One last, he muttered to himself, his stomach burning with fatigue. He felt like he couldn't do it, but he pushed on, his body screaming in protest. Finally, he lifted himself up for the 10th time, his muscles screaming in agony. He was able to finish it, but he was left breathing very deeply, his chest heaving with exertion. Damon lay back on the ground, his body trembling with fatigue. He felt like he had given it his all, and he had. He lay there, catching his breath, his muscles slowly recovering from the exertion. He stayed laying down, not moving an inch, his body exhausted from the previous exercises. He knew he was not done, he had to complete the rest of the workout, he couldn't give up now. Breathing was beginning to hurt, his lungs burning from the exhaustion. As his stomach moved, he slowly stood up, his upper body aching, his core and arms. It was time for squats, and he knew his physique was a liability. If he ever wanted to make money off fighting, he had to improve it. Damon stretched his shirt, wiping the sweat from his face. He felt like he had done 100 push-ups instead of 10, 100 sit-ups instead of 10. His muscles ached. But he wouldn't let pain bring him down. After all, pain wasn't anything new to him. It was his friend, his constant companion. He had grown accustomed to it, learned to live with it. Damon took a deep breath, preparing himself for the next exercise. He knew it wouldn't be easy, but he was determined to push through. He would complete the squats, no matter how much it hurt. The cool night air hit him, refreshing him slightly. But he knew it was only temporary, that the pain would soon return. He took another deep breath, preparing himself for the agony to come. He spread his legs apart, his feet shoulder-width apart, and stretched his arms forward, his hands extended in front of him. He began to lower himself down, his knees slowly bending as he descended into the squat. As he went down, he felt the strain in his legs, his quadriceps and hamstrings stretching and contracting. His muscles trembled with effort, his knees creaking softly as he lowered himself further. Damon's arms remained straight, his hands still extended in front of him as he continued to lower himself down. His back straightened, his core muscles engaging to support his body. He felt the burn in his legs intensify, the pain growing as he reached the bottom of the squat. His lungs burning, his breath coming in short gasps as he struggled to maintain control. The world around him narrowed to a single point, his focus solely on the exercise. He was aware of nothing else, only the sensation of his body moving, the strain in his muscles, and that was it. As he paused for a moment at the bottom of the squat, Damon felt the sweat dripping down his face, the salty liquid stinging his eyes. He blinked slowly. Then, with slow movements, he began to rise, his legs straightening as he stood up, his arms still extended in front of him.